Greetings, everyone. Welcome to this week's Pastor's Podcast. I am Cory, here with Joel.
Hello, hello.
And Jason.
Howdy.
So today we want to spend some time talking about Digital Vespers. We did our first Digital Vesper last month on Good Friday, and it's something that we want to continue doing. It was something that even without the COVID-19 restrictions, we would like to have started. And so it's something that we are able to do during the season. So we have our second one coming out tomorrow. Today's Thursday, so it'll be out tomorrow evening at 9 o'clock. So Joel, this is really your brainchild and baby. A lot of other people have been involved, but you are the one kind of editing it and directing it. So why don't you give us an overview of kind of what we can expect tomorrow night? I know I have a lot of questions. A lot of things, I know Jason does too, a lot of things that we are excited about. So the goal here is just to talk about it a little bit, give our members a little bit of a preview of what to expect, and hopefully some encouragement for them to participate and to share it with friends, particularly friends that are not Christians. So.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head with that last part of wanting to share with friends that aren't of the faith. It is a Christian prayer service, so it is that. We will read from the scriptures, we'll pray prayers to the triune God. It's not, not a Christian prayer service. It is, but it is designed to be able to engage people wherever they're at, whether they ascribe to a faith system or they claim to have no faith in anything. This is designed in such a way that the goal really for everybody, whether the people of faith, of the Christian faith or not, the goal for everyone is to make space in their time. It's something that's difficult for everybody living in the time that we do. Like we got some good feedback on the first Vespers. One of the things that we did, and we will do again tomorrow, is just sitting in silence. And the feedback I heard from a few different people was just saying that was actually really hard to do. And sitting in silence is hard to do really like any time, but let alone in the modern age of advertising, or especially now where all of our experience is online and digital. It's very difficult to sit in silence, but the goal for everyone is to make some space for reflection, for meditation, to make space to consider some of the deepest parts of our thinking, the deepest parts of our feeling. That's not something that we are immediately prone to do, and so these Vespers are designed to make a space for that.
So that's the general idea about the Vespers. So specifically, what is the topic? Again, the first one was focused on Good Friday. So what's the topic for tomorrow night, or the theme, or kind of the idea that we're seeking to explore and pray and consider?
Definitely. Yeah. So any topic, because that's the general idea of the Vespers, is to be able to speak to a broad amount of people. We're really looking for topics that would engage everyone. And so the theme for tomorrow night is the body. And obviously, if you're a human being, you have a body. So
it's a great point, Joel.
that's
some deep theology right there.
Yeah.
There you go.
We're diving deep here, folks.
So I mean, but whether you realize it or not, your body is obviously intrinsically a part of your experience as a human being, and maybe even more so than you think about. It's a part, the way that we process the world, the way that we bear pain in our bodies, the experiences that we have that shape even our own physiology. It's staggering to consider how complex and complicated the body is. And I think part of the reason why I wanted to explore this in this season, well, I think I talk about this a little bit in the introduction for tomorrow night, but part of the reason why I want to explore this is because all of us, to a degree, whether we're explicitly thinking about this or we're kind of just like existing in the season that we're in, all of us are thinking about our physical bodies, because our physical engagement has changed so much, right? So we've been in the season where we've been in our homes, and all of our kind of interactive human experiences, the majority of them have been like this, through a screen. we may be asking the question, again, explicitly or implicitly, is this a replacement for physical, like actually spending time together? Is there something significant about the physical? And so we wanted to ask this question kind of in a broader sense, like what is our body? And specifically, the theme kind of runs through this this kind of narrative form. We'll read some scriptures and stuff like that. And the scriptures ultimately we understand to be a story. We often use the language of creation, fall, redemption, and consummation. We're using that kind of framework of those four parts to use that as a lens to look at the body. So the scriptures have a lot to say about the body, and I think they offer a very compelling argument for what our bodies are, what happened to our bodies, what hope we have in our bodies, and ultimately what's going to happen to our bodies. I think the scriptures offer a very compelling case that is true to the human experience. And so with that, so that'll be the theme, is the body. Sorry, it's longer than you probably want.
No, that's good. That's exciting. I think that not only when you think about the topic of the body, I mean, obviously, you know, as you said, in the season of a pandemic, it makes us think about that. But also even before that, like the question of the body is so prevalent in our culture in all places about what it is and how we understand it. And I think one of the goals, or jobs, roles of Christianity being contextually appropriate is speaking to issues that are very present and that particularly there's a lot of confusion at a larger cultural level, and being able to cast a Christian vision for this specific issue. And so, I mean, look, there's a lot of confusion within Christianity about the body,
Yes.
and I think a lot of it, some of it's subconscious of just kind of cultural inheritance. About, I think if you ask most people, because Christianity is such a spiritual, I mean, there's the Christianity addresses the spirit and the soul, which is good. But I think sometimes what can happen is that because we think about, you know, this earth passing away, our bodies passing away, what lasts forever is our souls. And then sometimes that can mean like, oh, well, the body is not good, or our bodies don't actually last forever. And so you have some kind of unintentional bad theology that comes out of celebrating the non-physical over the physical, and elevating it. So we have that, but then even just the culture at large, like how many times do we see questions of the body at the core of really mainstream discussions about, you know, people saying, just images of the body, and, you know, people not being happy with their body and what it is, feeling like their true self is different from their body.
Right.
These kind of things are at the core of what it means to be a human. So
yes,
again, we're not solving everything, but I love that we are at least putting forth, I think, in a beautiful way, the basics of a Christian vision of some of these things. So
yes, that's right. And so, and just to comment on what you just said, I think both inside of the church and outside of the church, you have extremes on both sides. One side being the body is bad, and the other side being the body is ultimate. So it's setting everything right, and that's both inside the church and outside. Inside the church, you have kind of rooted deeply in church history, kind of more of a Greek philosopher, Plato's sort of idea that the spirit is good and the body is bad, right? And that was infiltrated the church throughout church history, and yet is not what the Bible puts forward about the body. And then within the church, you also have people that overemphasize the body to an unhelpful degree. Outside of the church, you have people that, you know, maybe would identify themselves as more spiritual. That there are a number of different ways that you would hear that outside of the church, that the body is just kind of just a placeholder to going to something else. But then we definitely see the overemphasis of the body, and that it's almost setting to the identity, like it's the starting point of your identity. You are who you sleep with, a physical activity, or you are, you know, like these are physical experiences that are setting to a person's identity. You think about, like you said, body image. You know, someone that struggles with the way that they look, that consumes them, right? Like that's something that their experience, it's their entire experience with life is viewed through this lens of what do I look like, right? So that's, I think it's, yeah, an immediate issue for everybody, kind of wherever you land on the spectrum. There is some, like, we need to find something that doesn't say that the body is bad, but also that doesn't say that the body is ultimate, because both of those are wrong.
Mhm. So Jason, when you think about like thoughts you have on the importance of this topic, or even as you think about questions that people have, what are some things that come to mind for you?
Yeah, you guys have already addressed a lot of kind of what was rattling around in my mind as I've thought about this, but maybe just if you guys could touch on maybe even more specific, like cultural kind of ways, or broken ways that people view the body, and maybe what was in the back of your mind, these cultural assumptions that we have of the body, whether it's good or bad, that you were, as you were kind of like thinking about structuring this and even writing the content of it, like what was driving you, and how were you trying to show that the scriptures show a kind of counter, more truer, expression of what that actually is.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can go first just with one example that was on my mind. I mean, and to answer that question, there's so many different ways to answer it, but I'll give one. I think a philosophical conversation, if you are interested in philosophy and you like to study philosophy, I think a conversation just about the evolution of the body and what is next. I think that there are lots of people within a philosophical conversation just about the body itself that would say that we're moving to an evolved form that does not include that does not emphasize the physical itself, but just saying, like, kind of the thinking is what is ultimate in this, and saying, like, like, and you can see that kind of argument and counter argument subsequently. Like, I just watched Wall-E a little while back with my kids, and that was like a cultural critique on what happens when we just sit around and watch TV all day, and like, you got all these people up in space because they destroyed the world and they're just consuming like crazy, and they're all like flying around on these little machines. The nature of the body completely changed. So I think that kind of like philosophical conversation of what's next with the body was definitely on my mind.
Yeah, I had a guest lecturer here popping in. I think, Jason, to use one analogy, and I think this shows up in lots of different views of the body, is that I think a lot of people think that the body is a little bit like a car. Like, we would not say we are a car, that we get into the car and it happens to be a mode of transportation that is necessary to drive to work, or to kind of go see family or go to the grocery store, those type of things. And so I feel like in a lot of conversations, and just like hearing people talk, regardless of whether they're viewing it like something like some type of almost transhumanism, like
Mm-hmm.
Joel's talking about, or just a conflict between the physical and the spiritual, or that the real person, the real Cory, is non-physical, and I'm just in this kind of collection of cells and things for this time being, but it's kind of like me just hopping in the car and driving to work. I feel like that type of misconception is there in a lot of places, and so trying to say, like, well, no, like Cory is not. You can't separate Cory from the physical Cory and the non-physical, like I am, for better or worse. This is my body, for eternity. And that, I think that's the beauty of the resurrection. And like, this is where this is so significant, is that when Jesus won the incarnation, where Jesus came and lived as a human being in the flesh, he was born, and the theological significance of that. Then also that when Jesus was raised, he was raised in a physical body. Like, he had a physical body. He ate food. He went to the bathroom. And so yes, it's a resurrected, glorified body. So it's a lot different than this body in the sense that it's enhanced, it's better, but it's still the bodies that we have. And so in the new heavens and the new earth, I'm going to have this body, but it's a resurrected, enhanced body. And
Yeah.
so it's not a rental car, so I think that's, to me, like, of all, like, I think Christianity has so many beautiful things to say about the body that are beautiful things,
Yes.
that are contrary to a lot of bad things being said about the body. And to me, that is one of the ones that really is the most helpful. Like, this isn't a rental car. This is us. Like, Cory is this body, and that, yes, I have a soul, but also have a body. And together they make Cory. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that really, the other way I've kind of been thinking about it, just to kind of add on to what you're saying, is that you alluded to it, the body was intentional. Like, God created these bodies. It wasn't like some happenstance, like, people always pit science against faith, but really the way that a lot of people think about in our scientific age, that, the body came to be and life itself it was kind of a happenstance, over, eons of, evolution and the evolving that we came to be what we are now. And the Bible would say that no, there was an intentional creation of who we are. There was intentionality behind it. It's not just like chemistry and biology and physics all working together to something just to happen, and we have no idea where it's headed. But there was an intentionality behind it, and that God lovingly designed it this way. It's headed for something. We're not just going to see where evolution takes us, but that God has a design and intent behind it. And that's even kind of I love the way that Joel, you and Cory both, I suppose, kind of set up the framework of considering this. And you want to talk about kind of how you designed this experience to kind of walk us through even kind of the story of the Bible itself and how the body plays into each of that, because I think that really speaks to this element.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do love that about the scriptures, that, like in different different parts of theological study and systematic theology and biblical theology, systematic kind of saying, okay, what does the Bible teach about the body? It's like, okay, we can do that and we can find things, but ultimately I think the Bible, like, we can take the Bible teaches systematically about the body, but ultimately we find the significance of the body in the story itself, because we can look back to the creation and then see the whole story and see even where we're fit into it right now and where we're headed. Like, that is, I think, ultimately the significance that the Bible offers to us regarding the body. So with that, yeah, like we are breaking this Vesper up into 4 different parts. I alluded to this before, but the creation, fall, redemption, consummation, that being kind of the general chapters of the gospel narrative of the Bible, the story of the Bible. We're using that lens, that story as a lens to look at the body. And so our 4 parts of this Vesper are, what is the body? The second is what went wrong. The third is what hope is there. And then the fourth is what will be the end. And I think with all of that, with each part, there will be a reading, there will be different prayers offered, and then each section will have a portion of sitting in silence, like we had talked about, just in reflecting on what we're hearing, reflecting on what we're praying. And then in a couple of spots, you'll have these different intentional works of creativity from different artists that are a part of our congregation. So for like there are 3 different pieces that are a part of the Vespers tomorrow. The first one being a visual piece that I had the opportunity to work with. There's a handful of professional dancers that are a part of our congregation, and so I got to work with them. We were shooting in a very socially distant minded way, where we were only doing one person at a time. They were in the same space, but they weren't dancing together at the same time. And so they're dancers, but really I think this piece is more of kind of like a visual work of art, if you could think of it that way. It's that first piece, it's called Disfiguration, and it's fit into the second part of asking the question, what went wrong? And again, this is one of these universal experiences as a human being where we don't have to tell somebody that something went wrong with the body. They already know. You know what I mean? Like they already experience death and decay. They already experience disease. They already experience the limitations of our body. And so, but yet they also experience beautiful things as well. And so this visual piece specifically is about the tension between the beauty and the pain of the human body. And so like what the goal of that piece was to show that tension visually. I also had the opportunity to do like some scoring. So like there's like a musical score, kind of like a film score sort of thing. It's about 5.5 minutes long. And I'm really excited about how it came out. I mean, it is truly ridiculous, the amount of artists that we have in our congregation that is so uniquely gifted. And it was such a pleasure working with them. The second kind of work of creativity comes from a member named Paul Turner, who's doing a spoken word. And like, man, this thing is savage. It's about 5 minutes or so of just him kind of going off, and actually really addressing a lot of the things, Jason, that you were just talking about kind of the nature of our bodies, and even asking the questions like, what are the limitations even of scientific study? Like, is scientific study enough for us to answer the questions that we have about the body and so on? He has a number of different kind of lenses that he's looking at the body, and really he crafted something really, really beautiful. And then the last thing is just a song that we sing. Pastor Maddie wrote the words to a song called Messiah Reign. I wrote the melody to that, and we just involving that's kind of ultimately it's at the end, and it's responding to the whole story of what we learned about the body, and kind of just saying ultimately our bodies are made for Jesus, and they came from God, and they're going to God. There's a passage in First Thessalonians, man, it's just been hitting me all week. We read it earlier in the daily liturgy, and then Cory and I we did a funeral yesterday, and he read it there, and then it'll be read here again tomorrow at the Digital Vespers. But there's a line this passage is about the body specifically, and there's a line that says, "So because our end will be with the Lord," it says, "So we will always be with Christ." Like, and just like the beauty of that, like the story is, God made us. We fell from him, but he offers us redemption through his spirit. He's now present with us, even in our broken bodies. And ultimately we will be with him again. And Messiah Reign is kind of just this almost like surrendering surrendering to God's will, and saying like, that is ultimately what we need, that we would be with Christ, and that our bodies are made for Christ. And so the Messiah Reign was an arrangement that has like string quartet and oboe and clarinet, and so a couple of vocalists, and I played some guitar and some ukulele, and all of it, same thing, was shot individually, one at a time, and which was a challenge, but I think it turned out pretty beautifully. So those are the three different works of creativity that'll be a part of it'll be part of the Vespers. Not that the other parts aren't creative; it's all creative.
Yeah. No, that's exciting. I think one of the things with this and the previous one, and for moving forward, it's just the way it allows so many different members their gifts and abilities to be used for something like this. It's exciting, and so I actually have not seen a lot of the artistic works, of the the dancers and things like that. So this will be. So we've had a lot of conversation, but the actual final production I haven't seen either. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see it. So
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
My bad. I will say, like, working on the visual piece in particular, because it was so collaborative in nature. I mean, I know nothing about dance. Like I'm sure a lot of you are like, oh man, like I've never even seen like a ballet. Like I've seen like the Nutcracker on TV once or something. You know what I mean? And so like just sitting down on a Zoom call with I think five of the professional dancers that are a part of our congregation, and just
Mhm.
talking to them about it. Like even like there is generally speaking, there is often between like the institutional church and artists, there's a weird kind of divide where oftentimes that like they just don't really understand each other. Oftentimes artists just flock to each other because they get each other, and the church doesn't really understand how, like it doesn't understand the mind of an artist. So oftentimes it's just like, oh well, I'll pay you to do something and I'm gonna just like squeeze you of what the Lord has given you, and then like they'll go to another church. Like that's that story I've heard so many times with artists and how they engage with the church. But just to sit down with them and collaborate on something with them, like it was, you could tell that it meant a lot to them, even just to like consider how what they do might be an expression of worship, might be an expression of something that's helpful to other people, and it's just beautiful on its own. And you know, like they're brilliant, honestly. Like coming up with what we did, like it was generally speaking, it was like I had a visual in mind, but they did everything and kind of
Mhm.
just took it from there. And oftentimes, you know, like when I say dance, that for some of you, you may be like, oh, what? Like, but when you see this thing, it's like it is something I think that you will immediately get. Like it's not
Mhm.
like you know, I think this is a really good introduction, and like what better theme to introduce the concept and like the creative art form of dance than with this theme of the body. It's all about the body. It's a visual experience of the body. So yeah, when you see it, I think you'll get what I'm saying, that it's not something like, I don't think it will feel foreign to you. I think that you'll be able to understand it right away.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, just I'm ready to watch it now. So look, well, there's so much more we could talk about and go into here, but I want to keep this at a time where people can realistically actually listen to what we're saying, what we're saying. So, any final, like, this has to be said before we end the podcast here by either one of you? No? Okay, I'll take your
I don't
silence
think so.
as a no. So, look, we just hopefully if you listen to this before Friday night, tomorrow night, make plans to participate, be active in sharing on social media. It's something again that we've said we've intentionally tried to frame it as something that can be evangelistic, but with the topic, with the way that we frame things, hopefully with the quality that we're putting forth, that it will resonate with our friends and family that are not involved in the church, or maybe distant from the Lord for whatever reasons. That it's a way to say, hey, something that you ask yourself a lot about the body, like the Christian faith speaks to these things. So it's not, the scriptures are not silent. So all right, well, as always, thank you for listening. We appreciate that, and we hope you have a good week. And until next time, may the Lord bless you.